Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel on tech and career trends in 2026. We're at a very specific moment in history, not just a technology shift, but a system shift. AI is moving from tools to platforms, from co-pilots to agents, and from experimentation to infrastructure. Conversations around AGI, autonomy, and acceleration are no longer theoretical. They're shaping how work is designed, how decisions are made, and how value is created. At the same time, careers are being quietly rewritten. Roles are less static, skills half life shrinking, titles matter less where you sit in the value chain. And in a VUCA world defined by volatility, uncertainty, complexities, and ambiguity, adaptability is no longer a soft skill, it's a survival skill. Today's conversations is grounded in Globant's 2026 Tech Trends report, which frames 2026 as the year we move decisively from hype to execution. This is the moment where organization and professionals are expected to prove impact, not just promise innovation. This is about predicting the future perfectly. It's about understanding direction, trajectory, and where opportunity concentrates. A little bit about me. I'm Yuri Maia, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. I'm a global people and culture leader with a background spanning HR, psychology, governance, and large scale transformation across highly regulated and fast moving environments. My work sits at the transaction of people, technology, and execution, helping organizations move from strategy to action while keeping leadership, ethics, and the employee experience front and center. I'm particularly focused on how AI, emerging tech, and shifting skills demands are reshaping careers and what leaders need to do differently to navigate a VUCA reality. I'm excited to guide today's discussion and learn a little side all of you. And to start off this panel, I wanted to introduce you a few of the folks on this call here today. So, Ritesh, over to you.
Uh, Hey everybody, my name is Ritesh Menon, and I lead the Trends Observatory team here at Globant, where we bridge emerging technology trends with real business needs through thought leadership and business focus MVPs. I've been with Globant for over a decade now, working across a wide spectrum of technologies and industries. And this really long journey has shaped my belief that innovation is not just about chasing technology, but about using it meaningfully to solve real business problems. So that's what me.
Our next speaker, I wanted to introduce you, Mr. Augustine. Augustine, over to you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Yuri, for introducing me. It's great to be here with all of you. My name is Agustin Huerta. I'm an SVP of Digital Innovation at Globant. I have led many of the most innovative uh, technology transformations internally in the company and for our customers. I led initiatives around AI, quantum computing, robotics in the past. And I'm the longer tenure guy in this call. I've been at the company for 16 years already. So it's a pleasure to be again participating on these kind of events that we do.
Thank you, Augustine. Our next panelist on this call is Mr. Daniel, who's also from my country, Brazil. So, oi, over to you, Daniel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel. I'm a tech part of one of the tech partners at Solid TDC, right? I have extensive experience leading engineering, data, and AI teams focused on execution, scalability, and career evolution. My work sits at the intersection of technology strategy, real-world delivery, and talent development. I do help and also, right, companies build reliable systems and empower teams that sustain continuous innovation. I'm Globant at like almost 7 years. So yeah, I'm the youngest here.
So, thank you, team. So, moving on, I wanted to kickstart this panel and I want to kick it off to Ritesh. One of my first questions, Ritesh, is, and I'll start with you. The report positions 2026 as the proof year, the moment that
Mm.
AI moves from experimentation to execution. Now, if 2026 is the year organizations have to move from hype to execution, what does that shift actually look like in practice?
I believe in practice the shift from AI hype to execution looks like a move from experimentation to reliance. Uh, Before AI lived at the periphery of the organizations, companies explored it, showcased it, proved it could work, but it remained optional. In 2026, I strongly believe that maturity looks more consequential. AI gets woven into the fabric of the business. It is embedded in real workflows, trusted to act within guardrails, and judged by the impact it creates. So the conversation changes from, look, here's what our AI can do, to here's how it has tangibly improved speed, efficiency, and decision making, with clear ownership and governance. And I believe that in my mind, that's when AI stops being eye-catching and starts being indispensable.
And when you say that term, AI stops being eye-catching, it becomes indispensable. What are things that, leaders, individuals of all levels in an organization, those entering organizations, understanding their things like VUCA exists, what are the things that they can do now to really have, the ability to have those eye-catching moments?
Well, I think you need to hold whatever implementations that you're doing and accountable to really tangible business results, right? There have to be KPIs defined to it. Make sure that whatever AI implementations that you're doing are moving beyond pilots, because and it kind of tested in real world production environments, which is scalable with large amounts of data. There is no running away from that. What we've seen in the past is that most of the AI projects kind of failed in the pilot stage, or rather POC stage. They really had never lived up to production systems because they were really stress test against what happens in the real world. So I think what we'll see from now on in 2026 is that you will have clearly defined KPIs, and these systems that you create will be judged against those KPIs, whether they live up to these expectations or not. So there's no running away from it now.
Thank you, Ritesh. Building on from that question, I want to take the next question over to Daniel. Daniel, I come to you next. The report makes a strong statement that AI is the platform, not the product. From a career perspective, what does that actually change about how people should think about technology in their roles? And if someone is asking themselves, how do I stay valuable? What's the simplest way to answer that in 2026? Building off from what Ritesh said when we understood KPIs and some of the other items he mentioned.
Well, that's a very nice question, because it's the changes in your mindset, right? It's, if it's not the tool, it's something part of the real product, right? So it comes from knowing to integrate how AI comes into the real business workflows, right? So and for career-wise, the most resilient careers will belong to people who understand the business, the process, and where AI creates real value.
That's a really important point, both Ritesh and Daniel. If AI is the platform, then career value shifts away from just knowing these tools and towards how work is actually defined. Not the work now, but also the work for the future to come. And it's how we stay connected and how we execute. It's less about using AI and more about integrating it into the real workflows and outcomes. With that framing, I think it's important for us to dive deep, Daniel, and I'll come back to you on one of the first major trends that I think we should cover here today is called, which is agentic AI. When we talk about agentic AI, what do we actually mean? In the simplest terms, what makes it different from, the kind of chatbots people might be used to at work, using it at work, and explain it like you're describing it to a colleague who only knows ChatGPT.
Well, bottom line, chatbots answer questions. Agentic AI does the work. Well, it understands a goal, breaks into tasks, and makes intermediate decision, and then acts, often without constant human input. So if you want an example about that, it's not tell me how to do it, but do it, monitor, and alert me if something goes off track.
That's a very powerful distinction. I think ultimately, once AI starts acting inside, workflows, it changes how the work is structured, and it also changes where human judgment, accountability, and this decision making really matter. And that brings us to an important question many people have asked, are asking, and will continue to ask, especially those who don't consider themselves very technical. If AI is becoming more agentic, the question isn't whether people can contribute, it's how. And I think I want to bring this question over to Agus.
Well, if you, I actually saw a TikTok this morning, and someone was discussing about it. Yes, and the thing is, what we are seeing right now with agents are very capable of planning on certain tasks that we give them tools to execute. Yes, and last week the conversation was around, hey, SaaS platforms are dead. Well, maybe more like their current business model is dead, where they are just relying on humans performing the task, and they will need to understand that now they will have agents running part of the task, even agents between companies communicating to each other, that the thinking, yes, of what needs to be done is still a human capability. Yes, if you want an agent, for example, to develop a software solution, you need to be able to describe very well which is the tool, the work to be done. Yes, and that is still a human capability. Yes, you cannot just rely on ChatGPT or any of the other AI tools to give you the proper description, because it can bring a lot of global knowledge, but how your business operates, how your organization operates, or how our customers, in our case, operate is knowledge that we have, yes, and that we translate to these agents so that they can perform their job. Yes, that skill is one of the most important to keep on developing right now, on how to be able to give explainability of our world to these agents.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, and I
Sorry.
wanted to give a chance for, both Daniel, Ritesh to comment, because this is a very important point. If AI is becoming more agentic, the question isn't whether people can contribute, it's how. And, over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, sorry. Well, AI feel less because of code again. It's more about the clear process, and that's the bit of our career from now on. That's what we need to focus on, in understanding the full process. Make sense?
Over to you, Ritesh.
Yeah, I think I'll add to what Agus mentioned, right? So you still require that human involvement. And I think in going forward, what you would require more than your technical skills is your domain expertise, your ability to um, kind of clarify the ideas that you have and extract the maximum that you can get out of these agentic systems. If you let these systems run by themselves, uh, it's going to be chaotic, right? So and you understand the business, you understand what is expected out of it. You need to be able to explain it clearly to the systems and kind of orchestrate them, right? So you still need to manage AI. And I believe that kind of management layer that humans bring in is not going to get removed anytime sooner.
My biggest takeaway from what you all mentioned is that AI fails less because of the code and more because of unclear processes. And when there's the lack of human oversight, it can lead to these particular failures. This is a critical takeaway, team. And what the report makes clear is that agentic AI doesn't succeed because the models alone. It succeeds because organizations get use cases right, data ready, right? And data today is gold. Workflows aligned and outcomes measured. In many cases, the biggest blockers and the biggest opportunities sit outside the engineering. So whether someone is technical or not, the real contribution in 2026 comes from connecting AI to value through adoption, governance, process change, and accountability. Now, so far, we've talked about how people contribute in an AI-driven world, whether they're technical or not. And one theme keeps coming up: governance, risk, and accountability. And these aren't optional anymore. It actually sets up perfectly for the next force, because when AI starts acting at scale, the security foundations underneath it really matter. If agentic AI is the brain of an enterprise, the report makes a strong comparison. Quantum technologies are becoming the nervous system. Question 5, I go back to August. How would you explain quantum computing in the simplest terms, and why does it matter now, in the future, and why is it very important, not just 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and so forth? Over to you, August.
Sure. So basically, quantum computing is based on the principles of quantum physics, and it allows us to have a larger number of scenarios represented with a single unit of information. If our smallest unit of information is the bit, which only can be a 0 or a 1. Qubits, as they are called, are a lot more than that. Yes, that can represent a lot of different states at the same point. So with a lower number of these individual units, you can represent more complex scenarios. There is one very good example that is like, if you want to represent a molecule of caffeine, yes, and everyone loves coffee, and I'm sure we all here in this call drink a lot of coffee. The caffeine protein is very, very complex to represent using just bits, yes. But that numbers drastically reduces when you are using qubits, yes. So I don't remember the exact math, but it goes from 2 to a very, very, very big number to almost 8 bits or something like that. Yes, so 8 qubits, sorry, or something like that. So it's very, very small. So that allows us to represent the reality with a lot more aspects that right now we are trying to simplify because our computers are not able to process that. If we go into the field of AI, that becomes very important. And many of you on the call, for example, may know that when we are talking about LLMs, we are talking about these billions of parameters or trillions of parameters that are being processed every time the model is trying to reach the next token or predicting the next world that it will give us a result. Well, representing that on traditional systems imply all these big deployments of GPUs, these big data centers that are consuming the same amount of power that small cities, and so on. When you go into quantum computer, that can be heavily reduced. So what that matters right now? Well, we are on the last stages of what is called quantum utility, and I invite all of you to see my conversation that we held on Converge with one of the guys from IBM, where we were discussing the stage of quantum computing. And right now we are living quantum utility age, which is we are capable of running quantum circuits, yes, that are meaningful, but it's still not transformative to the business value. And we are entering the age of quantum advantage, which is we are now capable of running quantum circuits that return real business value. So how that translates, for example, we're a pharmaceutical company being able to accelerate the drug discovery process. If we look into financial, well, this could be accelerating fraud detection systems that are less prone to false positives, for example. Yes.
No, and I think, leading and building off of, of quantum, I think the next question is to Daniel, because many individuals are probably asking, what are parameters? What does post-quantum readiness look like? How can I, bridge the gap between where I am to where I want to be, particularly around IT, AI, cybersecurity? So my next question goes to Daniel. Daniel, what does post-quantum readiness actually look like as a career opportunity in 2026?
Okay, so whenever a new technology arrives to the industry, right, it breaks, well, or it changes or it shakes the status quo that we already have, right? So it's, well, some people can be afraid about, oh, I'm going to lose my job or something that, or I need to focus on another thing for my career. And that's exactly because whenever something new arrives, new opportunities arrives as well, right? So it's not just regarding security because of quantum computing, where we'll break all the cryptography methodology that we already have today. So it's something much bigger. So it's like programs migration, right? Algorithm migration, or changes how we design the system. So secure by design architectures, we're gonna be on top of that as well, and also a lot of compliance, governance, and digital identity, right? So if I need to say something about the career, so for every people who positions themselves early become reference, not late executors. So that's my advice for them.
And
can I add something to that, Yuri? Sorry for interrupting you.
Oh,
yes, but when you ask me, hey, why this matters now, and connecting to what Daniel was saying, yes, when we were discussing AI maybe 10 years back, or even a bit more, yes, in our case, 13 years back, we were preparing everyone and saying, hey guys, you need to be aware that AI will transform us, will transform organizations, will transform the way we work. Yes. Quantum is the same. Yes, it transforms the way you think about how you represent. We were talking about how important it is for agentic systems to have a proper explainability around the world they need to operate. Well, quantum implies that now you can describe the world even with more details that you were given before, because you can represent them with these new units of information. Yes, and at the same time, AI will need to learn how to work with quantum. And what I mean by this, we see Claude Code and OpenAI Codex and all these agents, or even our Globant Coda agents around the world that are capable of building software solutions. And they have been exposed to millions of, or even billions of lines of code on different languages that has been produced so far. They have not been exposed in the same manner to quantum circuits, because there are not too many quantum circuits. There are not many quantum circuits that are public. And even they have differences between the current hardware implementations. Yes, they have some specificities to the hardware that you are running with. You don't think about it if I'm running on an Intel or a AMD machine or even a Mac. You don't think about that kind of things right now. But that is different when you go into the quantum world. So jumping into the quantum world, understanding how it works, understanding how building software solutions, what it implies, is very important for everyone in their careers moving ahead. Yes, not only because they may be building quantum circuits, but because they will need to interact with solutions that are built on top of quantum computing. Yes.
The biggest
Oh,
takeaway.
and also,
Go ahead, Daniel.
yeah, sorry. Because yeah, and Agus is totally right. Because whenever something in the hardware level arrives to our technology in our industry, that pushes everything forward. So, for example, that's why I'm focusing on what you should be paying attention around now. For example, today looks like AI. It's instantly respond on everything that you ask for them, right? So, if with content computing, that's gonna be 100 times faster and 100 times better, right? So that's why we need to stay on top today and be prepared for what's coming next.
Biggest takeaway, right? From a career opportunity, algorithm migration, secure by design architecture, my cup of tea, compliance, governance, and digital identity. I have a question for all of you, and I want to kick it to Ritesh. And it's about, career advice for two groups. The group A, those entering the workforce, those maybe in college now, maybe those trying to pivot and bridge the gap between, being a student to entering the workforce, and then those that are already working, maybe they have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, like all of you. What advice do you have for someone from an early career versus senior? What would you tell them to focus on first? If you guys could take just a few minutes here answering that, and then kick it off to Ritesh.
I think whether you're new to the industry, you're just going to get into the industry, or you're still at the college level or the university level, or you have like 15, 20 years of experience in the industry, what I believe is focusing on the fundamentals becomes non-negotiable. These technologies are changing rapidly, but as long as you're thinking in what we call as first principles or in terms of fundamentals, uh, you will still be able to catch on to these technologies very quickly. You cannot lose out on your critical thinking, your analytical thinking. Like, for example, what I tell my daughter who's like 12 years old is, don't get into coding. Don't worry about learning programming. That's a skill that you could always pick up, right? But focus more on math, physics, because these things I think are still going to keep you relevant. And I believe that applies to even experienced folks. Remember, you spent maybe 10, you spent 10, 20 years in the industry. You have a wealth of knowledge. Use that effectively to kind of get the maximum out of these technologies that are at your disposal. I believe for students, they live in amazing times. They have amazing tools at their disposal, and they should make the best out of it. My advice is don't be myopic about how these technologies will probably disrupt the jobs that you currently have, but rather think big and expand your horizon. Think about what are the real world problems that you could solve faster and probably at a scale that nobody has ever seen before. And the advice is across, at all experience levels. I would say the same advice would apply to all of them.
Thank you, Ritesh. And this builds on to the next question. I know August is very passionate about this. And essentially, if quantum is changing what we called earlier the nervous system of an enterprise, the next trend is changing its muscle. Let's talk about something very cool. There's movies, there's articles, there's magazines on this. Let's talk about robots. August, what changes when robots move from tools to more autonomous partners? How is this being applied by companies?
So part of the latest developments that we have had on AI and that I believe will be enhanced significantly by adding computing power, by quantum computing technologies, for example, is that robots will become a daily life thing that we will see on different aspects. Yes, and nowadays even you can start seeing it in some specific cities more than others. Yes, South Korea has a big deployment of robots all over the place. If you go to the US, you will see that many cities are now having food delivery done by those small robots with wheels that are moving around the city. But maybe the robots that we miss to see are those that integrates more naturally with our daily life, like, for example, autonomous vehicles. And I know we still have a lot of work to do in terms of that, but an autonomous vehicle is a robot, and connecting to what we've been discussing before, it's an agentic system. It's a software solution that builds on top of AI that is perceiving the reality through different sensings. In the case of autonomous robots, you have different types of sensors, cameras, lidars, and many more. Yes, you plan on what you need to do next, and you act by turning the wheels, by stopping, by accelerating. And a great example of that is if you go into or look into the keynote from NVIDIA into the CES this year, you will see that NVIDIA released a kind of white label solution for autonomous vehicles called Alpamasia that has been integrated on the latest model from Mercedes-Benz. Yes, and it's an agentic solution. But right now, still because of, again, the limitations that we have in terms of computing capabilities, it has like an underlying software solution that runs in parallel with more traditional ways of taking decisions, because you are talking about an autonomous vehicle, and the time to decision is one thing to consider in terms of how good the result is. So physical AI, as many starts calling robots, is bringing AI to keep on planning and acting on the physical world. It's already transforming industries. There are many pilots running on many manufacturing plants, especially on the automotive industry. And I believe we will start seeing that deploy becoming more massive across the world.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when AI becomes like this autonomous partner, the focus shifts from this isolated automation to more of an orchestration. And then with that said, the real value isn't necessarily the robot or, what is perceived as a robot, it's the systems around it. So it's not the vehicle itself, but it's all of those things that make it autonomous. As we transition over here to question number 8 and how we manage robots, what I personally believe it becomes very managerial. It's when machines start making decisions, someone needs to be accountable, right? Human oversight, HITL, right? Human in the loop. And that someone is often, that someone is often no longer managing people, but managing systems. This brings us directly to the topic of leadership. When new responsibilities and skills does this create for managers when managing robots? And I kick it over to all of you.
So, for example, you have some differences in there. I mean, a robot employee will not complain about, I don't know, their compensations, but they will complain if they lose network connectivity, or they will complain because they are still mechanical artifacts and they can have defects. So in the end, they need to start sending signals to their managers, yes, that they need attention. In that sense, they work very similar to a human being. Yes, humans send signals in different ways when they are disengaged with the work they are doing. Well, robots can disengage of the work they are doing by having physical failures, by having network issues, or even by something that we already explained before when we are talking about agentic works, that is, the tasks to be performed has not been properly described. And that can make the robot fail to perform the task, can make the agentic loop behind the scenes take the proper decision. And that's when we see those fancy robot videos of the robot just standing in front of the door thinking for 10 minutes before opening it, or even failing to, walk properly and just falling down. Yes. The task has not been properly defined. Even in some cases, modifications to the environment have not been properly defined for the robot to have some, rails in terms of where to operate. You can have coloring signals on the floor, as you do for employees on a manufacturing plant, or safe places to walk and places that are unsafe to walk. Well, for robots, that kind of things behave in the same manner. Yes. So again, robotic will create new leadership skills on people that right now, for example, is just used to managing a typical human workforce, because now you are talking about a hybrid workforce. And that applies to robots, apply to what we were discussing before of agents deploy on organizations. We're going to be talking about hybrid workforces, either pure software or a combination of software and physical AI, as it's called.
Thank you, August. I think, the biggest takeaway I get from that is that managing machines is managing encoded decisions, and that leadership involves from managing people to managing those hybrid systems that we've been talking about. And now we're ready to, introduce trend number 4. And as we head towards trend number 4, let's just dissect what we've spoken so far here today. We've spoken about intelligence, robots, systems, and machines. Let's move into something that's the polar opposite. Technology that disappears, technology that works so well. You forget that it's even there. This is where intelligence fades into the background, and that's exactly the point. Trend 4 is what we call ambient intelligence. And I want to give this over to my good friend and colleague, Ritesh. What is ambient intelligence in the simplest terms? What is ambient intelligence, and how should people recognize it in an everyday life? Over to you.
Okay. So let me take a very simple example. So imagine you're about to step out of your house, and as you get closer to the door, there's a small display on the wall. Let's say you have smart glasses that gently lets you know that rain is expected, because it's checked the forecast and it recommends that you should carry an umbrella. Now, you see the difference that you did not ask, you did not search. The system understood the context and responded. Right? So this, in what simple terms, is called as ambient intelligence. So it's when you don't have to reach out to the technology, the environment, the technology in the environment kind of senses what's happening around you, anticipates your needs, and responds in real time. Right, like you said, without demanding your attention. It's all about reducing friction, freeing attention. And I think the best systems in ambient intelligence are the ones that only help when needed and stay visible the rest of the time, right? That's the beauty of what is ambient intelligence.
And to follow up on that question, right? So if it frees attention, what changes then do we measure value? And what is the kind of work that humans can particularly focus on?
Yeah, so I think what happens with ambient intelligence is that attention becomes a real ROI. And this changes the way businesses have been measuring client or user engagement drastically. So traditionally, what happens is businesses have optimized for user engagement. More time spent, more clicks meant success. With ambient intelligence, you kind of flip the story. Value shows up in moments when you do not have to interact at all. So the way business will have to start measuring is how many steps should we remove? Were we able to avoid interruptions? And were we able to return this time to the user, right? Back to the end customer. Let me give you a simple example that's in the trends report as well, which is in healthcare. Today, clinicians spend a lot of time documenting conversations after a patient visit. Okay, so this is a laborious, time-consuming, repetitive, boring task for the doctor. With ambient scribing, what happen is that these conversations are recorded in real time, converted into draft notes in the background. Thereby, this frees up the doctor's time, kind of spending in doing this documentation manually. They just have to review it. And in turn, it helps them spend more time with patients, which is what is more important for them. Right? So the work that fades is this repetitive, onerous, attention draining, and really boring work for them. What becomes more important in this case is judgment, empathy, decision making, because I strongly believe that these are parts of the work that technology cannot commoditize. Right? So that still remains human, but then the human actually is able to spend more time on these aspects of the work that matter a lot.
And I love how you ended with these human skills, the soft skills, which for me are
Yeah.
still gold, right? The golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. And that's where decision making, empathy, impulse control, corporate governance and social responsibility. And that's where it gets very interesting for leaders. When technology disappears, traditional metrics break down. You can't measure
Yeah.
clicks, logins, or screen time because the best experiences is when there are none. And this transitioned us to the last and final trend. And one of the important things here is that um, as we think about closing the loop, where we've touched on machine, time, human value. Let's talk about every role, every industry. And the last tech trend here is AI powered cybersecurity. And I want to give this over to August. What does AI powered cybersecurity mean?
Well, AI power security has like many different layers. One is more related to at the time you are developing a software solution, how you take care of making sure that the solution will be safe and secure in the future. So all the activities that can be performed by leveraging Agentic AI, for example, to do reviews of the code of the solution, of the infrastructure that is being configured, and so on, to prevent that whatever you deploy later on has any potential backdoors or challenges in terms of security. On the other end, you have also active AI cybersecurity. Yes, AI solutions that are actively looking into patterns, recognizing patterns of potential attacks, and that spans a big umbrella of different things. Yes, an attack could be detected by the traffic that you are having on a website, but also you have ways of recognizing unnatural patterns of how information is being entered on a system. Yes. And that could be, for example, if a human is being threatened by someone, it will act on a different way. If on the other end, an agentic system is being used to attack you, they will be entering, information faster than a typical human being will be doing because they can just autocomplete it, basically. Yes. So in both scenarios, you will be protecting against different ways of input of data that you believe are natural in some way to the kind of expectations that you have. This type of cybersecurity also right now faces a new challenge based on what we have been discussed before. That is, now you have agents talking to agents in many cases. Yes, and those protocols are still evolving, and so active AI cybersecurity becomes crucial to understand potential flaws on your security workflows, considering these new kind of interactions that we are not used to have. Because this is for many a new kind of software solution that is being deployed within the organization.
As we protect against these malicious actors, I'll bring the next question over to Daniel. How do we create that competitive advantage? How do we reframe security careers in 2026 and the careers that will do exactly what August mentioned, right? Learn these patterns, detect anomalies, respond before damage happens. And damage is reputational damage. There could be personal harm. How do we create that competitive advantage? How do we secure companies? How do we secure data? How do we secure people? How do we go from, a position of where we could be hacked to how do we protect a company?
So I will need to do like, or at least explain a little bit of context first, right? So whenever every people here is, well, already talked a little bit with some AI or some LLM, and whenever you do that, you start, the first answer is good, right? But if you keep talking, you 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 think that it's amazing because it looks like a real person is talking to you, and that's when our brain shifts to something that is not good for our careers. Okay, and why is that? Because again, whenever a new secure system arrives, someone in some time, given time, it breaks, right? Or at least tries to break. And it's not an AI that's breaking that. In the past, well, we all humans do that. Actually, a human do that. And because it's the creativity, right? The AI operates in a given expertise domain window. It's not, does not have creativity. It just have knowledge based on the training that they had, right? So this is the problem, because unifying those points that I already talked, we consider that the AI can do whatever we humans can do as well. And it's not because a new AI that's our system are at risk. But again, it's because of creativity. So AI does whatever it does very good and very fast, better than humans, but but lacks creativity. And that's the point. So if we need to, well, create competitive advantage, we need to understand the system, the whole, not the AI. The AI is just a piece of the part of the system. So I would say, well, security, we're going to be stop being a call center, becomes a growth enabler. Makes sense? So we need to understand the full picture, not just be worried about AI. And that's how security we're going to evolve faster, because human is going to be on the loop and on top of the AI. So we are going to make AI our workers, well, workers, right? To build whatever we need to build faster. But again, we need to pay attention on the process, not on the tool.
And I love that. I love how and I'm going to bring the next question back to both you and Ritesh. I love what you mentioned in terms of human having that curiosity, right? And I think what makes us human is that ability for us to be curious, for us to have the ability to come up with amazing things that has, been part of our human history. And earlier, Ritesh mentioned soft skills, empathy, decision making, impulse control. The next question is a very important topic, and if it comes back to what we call deep fakes, the hiring impact on the market. Today the volatility on the on recruitment, on those joining organizations. Who are we hiring? That virtual and hybrid model, trust is becoming a very technical problem. So the next question to both of you, how do we manage deep fakes in hiring? What is the impact that it can have on the market? And I want to go back to you, Ritesh.
Oh, I think it's a problem that we're still figuring out how to solve. Because I think, when we talk about deep fakes, it's about sort of AI cheating you, but humans cheat other humans as well. So we still haven't been able to get around that. But I think in terms of AI systems, especially when you're building a deep fake system, I think as a company you need to come out and talk about it. This is a synthetic human, or it's an interface that has been developed by AI. It's not a human interface, right? So that kind of disclaimer has to be put out there, because the end users need to be aware of what they're dealing with. Uh, I think there are technologies that are being implemented right now to kind of detect these deepfakes. I still think, in my opinion, and maybe wrong, but they're still far away from kind of being very foolproof. So it's an evolving field. It's something that we will have to wait and watch. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting thing, but yeah, it's still fraught with a lot of challenges out there.
And Daniel, and thank you, Ritesh. And Daniel, like when we think about in the simplest terms, like proof of humanity, what does that look like in the hiring, right? From verification to the employee experience. What are things that, as companies we should be looking for, right? Whether it's stronger digital verification, looking at behavioral analysis, like what are the things that are going to protect us against the deep fakes, but at the same time show us what proof of humanity looks like in hiring?
Okay, that's a very complex question to answer. But baseline, we need to verify if it's we talking to a human. Well, again, if you're just talking about chat with like ChatGPT or something like that, you can be very well foolish because of the kind of answer, very well structured. So AI or any agentic system can mimic a lot of our behavior, but what it cannot really well simulate it, it's the real behavior of the person, right? So whenever we run out of context and ask something, well, not scripted for the AI, it's gonna break. It's gonna not break in the sense of stop working, but it's not gonna know how to behave. And that's the real point of the hiring process on this new era. Because again, if I do starting asking technical questions for a candidate and then shift to something more personal, maybe the AI cannot answer, or maybe it can, but it's not gonna behave correctly. It's not gonna feel like any emotions at all. And that's the point that we need to take, or at least pay attention right now, because it's not possible to mimic that at least right now. Make sense? So this is the point, or this is my advice that I would say that we need to focus on.
Thank you, Daniel. And I want to, go back just a bit here with August, because August is very much involved in robotics and quantum. August, how do you view this narrative here?
So we need to understand that deep faking traditionally was more thought about how we deep fake a voice or how we deep fake the image of an individual, yes, their look alike. But now we are seeing other kinds of deep faking, yes, like for example, resumes that are tuned to be better perceived by a human when reading it, more suitable to what the job is doing. In the past, we used to do that. I mean, every one of us, when applying to a job, look into the description and try to emphasize on those characteristics that are more relevant to their specific hiring that it was happening at this time. Well, now that has been escalated to also think about words that autonomous systems that are involved in the recruiting process can, score better an individual than other. Yes. So the problem keeps on scaling. What we need to find out is which are those point of failures. So, for example, when we talk about LLMs, is if I keep on having a longer conversation, their performance drops significantly. And there was a recent report done by Microsoft, and I believe NVIDIA was also involved into it. I don't want to lie, but I think it was authored by both of them, that says that the longer that conversation or the interaction that you have with the model, the harder they fall in terms of keeping coherence. Yes, and they drop up to a 39% of their coherence when discussing. Yes, so those are techniques that we can use on our benefits. And when we think about the future with quantum, yes, we need to start thinking how, again, quantum will increase our computing capabilities and have a very good understanding of those potential flaws for those AI solutions and understand where we can leverage them to try to distinguish reality from AI-generated content. Still, as Ritesh was saying, I believe that we will need the people that is generating the AI content to start creating more tools for identifying upfront that content as being AI generated. And as consumers, we will need to start, asking for the individuals producing that content to be very transparent about what is AI and what is not AI of what they have been generating. Yes. Robotics, it's not going to be so heavily affected as of now. Yes. But we need to start thinking that there is a good thing that same techniques that we use for deep faking are used in many cases for simulation in robots. So that has helped us increase training. If we go back to the cybersecurity challenge that this will also imply is if someone, and this happens already with IoT devices on manufacturing or I don't know, an oil and gas field. Yes, it's a cybersecurity problem because those devices are connected. If someone interferes with the signals that we are capturing from them, they can lead to taking wrong decisions. In the case of robots, deep fakes of what they are perceiving basically or mainly by computer vision. Yeah, so someone interfering with the feed of the camera of the robot and injecting a deep fake video of a reality could make the robot interact in the wrong way. Yes. So it may not affect our recruiting or hiring processes, but in this concept of managing a hybrid workforce, it will affect how they perceive reality in the same way as we do. Yes. Vision is a tricky sense.
Thank you all for that wonderful input. I almost get this like goosebumps thinking. I feel like I'm living to the best time in humanity. Things I watched as a kid, movies and books I'm currently reading, have read, and where we are to where we're going with quantum computing, with AI, with robotics. I think the future is it's looking like we're heading towards a very wonderful future, and what that humanity and our involvement with robotics, AI is going to look like. And this leads me to our last and final question. And we've talked a lot here today. So I want the last question to be very personal. And the biggest takeaway I've had is that careers will be less about isolated skills and more about understanding those complex systems we've talked about. We've spoken about, well executed and these small wins, they build reputation, right? Those small compounding efforts, right? If you add a little to a little, eventually that little will become great. And that reputation creates opportunity. We've spoken about how picking one real problem and measuring that problem, we can then use AI to solve that problem better. So let's make this last question personal. What's one small step someone can take this year, 2026, to build momentum for the world that's coming? And I want to go back to you, Ritesh.
Uh, well, what I would say is, like I mentioned this before, right? To pick one small problem, any real world problem. Right? It doesn't have to be necessarily a business problem. Take one real problem because technology is about solving problems for us humans. And I think the biggest message that I want to kind of relay is that we as humans will never run out of problems to solve. We'll always have problems to solve, no matter how many technologies we have. These will not kind of replace our purpose. They'll not remove our purpose. Rather, they'll amplify our ability to solve problems faster. Right. So when you talk about quantum, you talk about AI. These are going to help in just making our lives better. People like we always talk about quantum helping create new medicines. Helping solve diseases with AI and quantum both. Robotics kind of augmenting the physical work that we do. So I think these technologies definitely will just be help us to kind of solve these problems faster. I want to touch upon another point that we've been talking about a lot in this discussion is that communication. And Yuri, you are from the human resources side, so you know the importance of communication. I think that becomes super important as we go ahead, and that's something that everybody needs to keep in mind when we talk about communication with agents, when communication with robots. That translates to uh, clarity in speech, clarity in thought. Right? So that is a super important skill. Um, so I think it's just take one small problem, define what better looks like, measure its impact, start building responsibly, right? And responsibility is super important. We talked about all the challenges around the ethics, the concerns that we have with these systems. So every time you build something, think about whether this is going to have a positive effect on society or is going to be a disruptive effect. So bring in the governance, bring in the guardrails, which you're a big advocate of, Yuri, I know. And so these things will only make our lives better. And I think, and that's just going to make society better overall. Yeah.
I love that, right? Doing things that will make society better. So not just what will make now better, but the future societies to come.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned you're teaching your daughter mathematics, right? It's kind of that kind of energy and mindset, everyone. And I want to go over to Daniel now. Daniel, how do you view this? Like, what is one small thing that anyone can build momentum for the future to come?
Okay, so everyone here should pay attention on every topic that I already talked, because that unifying all together is the core value for everything that we're gonna build, at least in the future, right? Because again, the basics you have a very good foundation, especially logic, that's gonna help you build better system. If you know what AI can do right now and what could do for you, that's gonna part of your system as well. Put everything together and you build the system around it. And that's the bit of the thing. And that's how you need to use this momentum or this shifting era to understand the basics and the AI and make everything all together. Remember, AI will not, well, discover anything new besides whatever we point that to them. They do not have a creativity. So it's up to us, human in the loop, right? So that's the thing. You do not need to worry about, okay, AI gonna, well, steal my job or anything like that. I'm gonna lose everything that I built until now because of that. It's an era of changing. So you need to evolve as well. So because everything that does not evolve, well, sometime, some point in the future, you're going to be forgotten. So that's why you need to keep moving forward, keep thinking about how your creativity is going to overcome AI, because AI does not have that. AI cannot, well, AI can work in a specific context, but it cannot push this boundary. Does have limits. Like I told you before, AI operates in a given specific domain of a window domain, right? It does not have the full picture. Humans can do that. Humans can associate different contexts, similar contexts from different areas. So that's how creativity overcomes what AI can do faster.
Thank you, Daniel. And finally, over to you, Agus, who I know is very passionate about this topic. Please.
So I will combine a bit what Ritesh and Daniel mentioned, and also come back with a few things that we discussed before. So technology is there to solve human problems. That's basically the definition of technology. We create technology to transform the environment in which we operate and take that as a longer term. Yes, it could be your house, it could be your organization, it could be the actual physical environment. Yes. So technology is there for doing that. I believe that for many years and different ways in which civilizations have evolved, we have moved from everyone thinking on their problems and trying to solve them, yes, and working collectively to solve those problems, to people being allocated to performing a specific task that were defined somewhere else, yes. And so people start executing that without really understanding which is the problem they are trying to solve. If we go into people developing software, I know a lot of very good people that can develop very good code, but they don't really take a lot of attention to what they are solving. So they don't really learn about the problems they are solving behind the scenes. Yes. I know a lot of developers that are very good developers, but cannot describe what they have solved or helped solve as a problem. Yes. At the same time, I believe there is people in many other functions that they just perform the job as it was defined because that's the way someone explained them to do the job, and that's what they do. So if you need to take one step, first is understand the problems that you were solving, yes, either by building a software solution, or if you are, I don't know, an accountant in a financial department, a recruiter on HR, no matter the role, which are the type of problems that you are trying to solve. With that, leverage AI to help you understand how to solve those problems, understand which are the new problems that will arise, as Ritesh was mentioning, because there are many things that will start coming, and as Daniel was explaining, you can start envisioning with a larger scope as soon as you get rid of those things that get you focused on a single task to be performed. And so keep on expanding on that and keep leveraging AI to keep on thinking about solutions for those wider problems. If we go back to the start of the conversation, I already mentioned that the key concept for everyone moving forward is explainability. How you explain, how you operate, which are your problems, how to solve those problems, and think on all the use and on all the edge cases that those use cases will have to keep on solving those problems sequentially. Yes. So that's for me like the main thing to focus moving forward.
I don't know about all of you, but and all of those joining in, but I get the chills because I've learned so much here today from this wonderful panel, from explainability to black box to human in the loop to accountability and transparency. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me as the host because I got to learn a lot about quantum computing, about agentic AI, Globant's impact in the market, and how to build autonomous machines, which we create these systems that govern that. And the biggest message from this report is not that these machines are replacing people. It's the work itself that's being redesigned across agentic AI, quantum security, intelligent robotics, ambient intelligence, and AI-powered cybersecurity. The common thread is this: advantage will belong to the organizations and the people who can turn technology into trust and intelligence and impact. 2026 isn't about hype, it's about proof. The roles that will matter most are not just builders of technology, but leaders of governance, risk, security, product, operations, and human judgment. People who understand AI changes decisions, accountability, and value. We spoke a lot about this. Hiring will shift from credentials to credibility, from what you know to how you think, how you validate truth, how you work alongside intelligent systems, the very systems that we spoke about here today. The real competitive advantage won't come from adopting AI first. It will come from adopting it responsibly, measurably, and at scale. The opportunity ahead isn't just learning new tools, it's learning how these systems reshape leadership, trust, human value, and where careers will be built. A very important item for me is that AI governance isn't about slowing innovation. It's about making innovation sustainable. We spent a lot of time, and the panel spoke about hiring, deep fakes, hacking. As AI becomes more embedded in hiring, healthcare, finance, consulting, retail, and all the different spectrum of organizations out there and in the industries. The real risk is not the technology itself, but how humans choose to deploy it. Without governance, AI can amplify bias, erode trust, and trust is the foundation of everything, and create legal and ethical blind spots at scale. AI governance provides the guardrails, clear accountability, transparency, risk management, and human oversight, ensuring AI systems align with organizational values, laws, and societal expectations. And Ritesh spoke about doing something for the society. The organizations that will lead the future are not those that adopt AI the fastest, but those that adopt their responsibility. Because in the end, trust is the most powerful technology we have. I want to end it there. I thank each of you for being here today. We're all joining in from different parts of the world. Thank you. For those of you on the call, I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck in your careers, and I hope to see you next time around. Thank you, and over to you.